R.S. Documents, Early Reports on the History of Radhasoami. Written by David Christopher Lane. Narrated by Justin M. Grant. Editor's Introduction. For the past 45 years, I have been researching the history of Radhasoami, as founded by Shiv Dayal Singh in Agra, India, back in the mid-part of the 19th century. I am particularly fascinated by the early days of the movement, and how it evolved from a relatively small and obscure satsang to a worldwide faith with millions of adherents. I fondly remember my first book contract with Garland Publishers in New York and London in 1979, when Professor J. Gordon Melton asked me to produce an annotated bibliography on Radhasoami. I would spend hours at the University of California, Berkeley, and University of California, Los Angeles libraries, trying my best to track down each and every book that mentioned Santmat, Shabad Yoga, or Radhasoami. In those pre-internet days, it was a romantic adventure, since one was never quite sure what one would discover. I was lucky to find texts that were hard to find and seldom read. Ironically, most of the earliest works, outside of the group's own publications, were written by Christian missionaries, who were not always objective or impartial. There are very few writings concerning Radhasoami from the latter part of the 19th century and the early part of the 20th century. Although the information they contain is sketchy and oftentimes inaccurate, they do provide an important historical glimpse into the early days of the movement. In this collection, I have included the writings of Max Mueller, Hervey DeWitt Griswold, John Nicol Farquhar, James Bissett Pratt, and J. Kennedy. Each author has provided us with an early interpretation of how Radhasoami developed, and has also given us a summation of the group's theology. This volume is the first in a series that the MSAC Philosophy Group plans to publish. Our hope is to make early Radhasoami literature, from books to articles to ephemera, more widely available for future scholarship, and those interested in understanding more about the life and work of varying gurus in this ever-growing tradition. Note: for a more exhaustive bibliographic record of Radhasoami literature, please refer to the Radhasoami Tradition by Mark Juergensmeyer and David Christopher Lane in the Oxford University Press's bibliography series on Hinduism. The Radhasoami Satsang by J. N. Farquhar in Modern Religious Movements in India, 1915. The Radhasoami Satsang. The word satsang seems to come from the Sikhs, among whom it means a company of pious people. The phrase Radhasoami cannot be explained apart from the history of the sect. It is dealt with below. In order to secure a reliable account of this society and its teaching, a few paragraphs are here transcribed from a manual of doctrine published by the second guru. 1. The Radhasoami faith derives its name from the original founder, the Supreme Being, Radhasoami, who appeared in this world in human form and designated himself Sant Satguru, or perfect saint, or true guide and preceptor, and preached holy doctrines to sincere inquirers of truth for the deliverance of their spirit from the bondage of body and its surroundings, as well as from the pains and pleasures of this world, and for the ultimate admission of their spirit into the holy presence of the Supreme Being, after traversing and breaking through the trammels and impediments in the material spheres. 2. The holy name Radhasoami has been given out by the Supreme Being himself. It resounds in splendid refulgence in the higher spheres, and can be heard within themselves by those who perform devotion by practicing Surat Sabad Yoga according to the instructions given by the Supreme Being himself. 4. This holy name, Radhasoami, signifies both the Supreme Being and the original spirit or sound current, or word, which emanated from his holy feet, and which is the prime factor and principal agent in the whole creation. 6. The 3 degrees or grand divisions comprised in the entire creation, according to Radhasoami faith, are 1. Spiritual, 2. Spiritual material, 3. Material spiritual. Pure spirit, uncontaminated with matter, exists in the first grand division. Here the Supreme Being reigns over absolutely spiritual life. This, the purest possible form of life, has no desire but to love and serve the Supreme Being. The joys, the very existence of this pure spirit life are derived from the Supreme Being, who is the ocean of spirit, love, and joy. Nothing concerning this degree is known or has been known to the founder of any religious creed. It comprises 6 subdivisions and is called the Dayal Desh, or the regions of mercy. 7. The second or spiritual material degree or grand division is entirely free from all worldly passions and desires of the lower order. Likening the Supreme Being to an ocean, the president of the second degree is a tide from that ocean. He is a kind of viceroy who rules over all life existing in the space comprised in the second and third grand divisions, committed to his care. As its name indicates, the spiritual material degree contains both spirit and matter. But matter is, comparatively speaking, pure, and is subject to and controlled by spirit. Life here is very pure, and, though clothed in pure material forms, spirit predominates. This degree also comprises 6 subdivisions, and is called the Brahmanda, or the regions of universal mind and pure matter. 8. In the third or material spiritual degree, matter predominates over spirit. Life is composed of spirits, wholly clothed in coarse matter. Having quite forgotten the higher abode from which they originally sprang, the spirits here have acquired carnal desires and passions. This also comprises 6 subdivisions, and is called the Pinda, or the regions of individual mind and coarse matter. 9. This degree is dominated over by a wave, emanating from the Supreme Being and flowing through the tide which has already been likened to a viceroy. This wave or current may, for want of a better name, be called a governor who presides over the material universe and controls matter. 12. The Supreme Being, as already said, is unknown. The Spirit, or the Viceroy, who presides over the second degree, is the Lord God of the Bible. He is the Sat or Satchitanand or Brahman of the Vedanta, the Nirvana of the Jains and the Buddhists, and the Lahut of the Mohammedan saints. The Spirit or Governor who rules over the third degree is the Brahma or Paramatma or God of most religions in the world. 13. The entire creation below the first degree is composed of 2 parts, namely, spirit, which is all good and pure, and matter, which is always more or less bad. Man is a drop from the ocean, that is, the Supreme Being. This drop of pure good spirit is so mixed with matter that it becomes in bondage thereto, and unless aided by a superior spirit, is always liable to yield to temptation and deteriorate or sink down in matter. 16. There are 2 streams in our solar system, the one ever improving, the other always deteriorating. The spirits of the first of these streams pass from plants through the lower creation till they reach man. They then become angels or heavenly spirits and ultimately merge into the Supreme Being or remain in his presence. Maintenance of individuality in the changes later than man depends upon the practice of devotion according to Surat Sabad Yoga, or the union of the spirit with the Word being the emanation from the Supreme Being. If such devotion be not practiced, the spirit loses its previous individuality and becomes merged into a lower stage fit for its reception. A devotee, when merged into the Supreme Being, can assume his individuality at pleasure. Such a being is called a perfect sant, a special and beloved son of the Supreme Being. But the spirits who belong to the deteriorating stream are wholly under the influence of matter. At every change, they get lower and lower until they reach the lowest form in the creation. 17. The Supreme Being has special and beloved sons called sants and param sants, who are full of mercy and love, and who descend periodically upon the earth to deliver spirits from the bondage of matter, and to carry them to the presence of the Supreme Father. 18. Anyone desirous of reaching the Supreme Being must search for a Sant Satguru, incarnation of the Supreme Being, or a Sadguru, one who has reached the top of the second grand division, and invoke his help, and receive instructions from one of these superior guides as to the manner of his devotion and procedure. 21. The name of the Supreme Being is Radhasoami. He is impersonal, but personal in the second and third divisions, and when he manifests himself through humanity as Sant Satguru. His attributes are mostly met with in the Sant Satguru, who might be called an incarnation of Satpurush Radhasoami, the true Supreme Being. 22. The deliverance of spirit from the bondage of body, senses, and mind, and its gradual ascension and eventual entrance into the first or highest division by the practice of Surat Sabad Yoga, is perfect salvation according to Radhasoami faith. 24. Radhasoami faith is not built on the basis of scriptures appertaining to Hindu or any other religion, but on the precepts or instructions of the Supreme Being himself, who appeared on this earth in human form and graciously performed the functions of a Sant Satguru for the benefit of degraded humanity. 25. The sound heard internally is a current, which has originally emanated from the Supreme Being, and is the means not only of concentrating the will, but also of raising the spirit to the source from which it emanated. 27. It must be clearly understood that by sabad or word or internal voice is meant the spirit or life current which enlivens every part of the body, and is the main principle or essence which supports life in and gives activity to every being or body in the whole creation or universe. 28. At present, the spirit of man is residing in the third or material spiritual region, and has, therefore, to do all the work here by means of the senses and the mind, which are mediums between it and the material objects, and consequently, as a natural result, its power has become quite hampered. But as soon as it begins to ascend, the powers which are now lying dormant become active, and the spirit acquires ultra-material or higher powers. 29. The method for taking back the spirit to its supreme source is first to concentrate at the focus of the eyes, the spirit and mind, which are diffused in our body and in a manner tied to external objects by desires and passions, and next to commence its journey homewards by attending to the internal sound, or in other words, by riding the life or sound current which has originally emanated from the Supreme Source. 30. The current, which has been instrumental in having brought it down here, must naturally be the only true path for its return to the original source, and whoever finds this current is on the path of emancipation. This current, which is the spirit and life current, is called in the Radhasoami faith sound, sabad, or word, or holy name. 34. To approach the Supreme Being, there is absolutely no other means except the practice of Surat Sabad Yoga, under the guidance of a Sant Satguru, or a Sadguru, or a sincere lover of the Supreme Being, who has received instructions from, and is helped in his practice by, one of those superior and holy spirits. 35. Prayer is necessary to obtain blessing and mercy to help man's perfect salvation, but it must be offered from the inmost heart and not confined to mere utterance. It must also be backed up by words of faith and charity performed through love and affection for the Supreme Being. 37. In following this mode of devotion, the following restrictions are made with regard to diet and mode of living. No intoxicating drink or drug and animal food is to be taken, and immoderate indulgence in any desire is to be avoided. Animal food is forbidden on account of its producing a material tendency in human nature, and intoxicating drink is detrimental to a calm and natural state of the brain and the nervous system. Other public and private duties should be carried on as usual. 38. The moral code appertaining to Radhasoami faith is comprised in 2 sentences. 1. All acts, including spiritual practice, which tend to free the spirit from matter and raise it towards its source, are good works. 2. All acts which tend to degrade the spirit by weighing it downwards deeper and deeper into matter are bad works. Again, any action done with a view to help the needy from unselfish motives is good work, and the contrary, bad work, in this world. 147. A member of Radhasoami faith is strictly forbidden to divulge the secrets or mention to anyone, even to a fellow member without express permission, the glory and wonder of the higher creation he sees now and then within himself, or the happiness and extraordinary joy he experiences during his practice, or the special mercy, grace, and protection extended to him from time to time on important occasions by the Supreme Father and Sant Satguru. 2. One fact stands out clear from the above statement of doctrine, that the Guru occupies a place of supreme importance in the sect. He is the center of the whole, for he is not only the source of revelation, but the essential means of salvation. Thus, the sect ought to have an unbroken succession of gurus. There have been already 3, and a 4th is now required. The following facts are taken from a book by the 3rd Guru. Note, that book is Discourses on Radhasoami Faith. The first Guru was an Agra banker of Kshatriya caste, born in 1818. His name seems to have been Tulsi Ram, but he is better known as Siva Dayal Saheb. He came of a pious Vishnuite family, and had his guru, whose name was Tulsi Saheb. Yet, according to the sect, he did not learn any of the deep things from his guru, but brought his divine knowledge with him from the other world. He is said to have had the power of sending people into samadhi, that is, a sort of religious trance, and of enabling them to see visions. He publicly proclaimed his doctrine in 1861. He left 2 books, each named Sar Bachan, i.e., essential utterance, one in poetry and one in prose. He died in 1878. His ashes lie in a sacred tomb in the Radhasoami garden, Agra. His titles are Radhasoami Dayal and Swamiji Maharaj. The second Guru was born in Agra in 1828, in a family of Kayastha caste. He was a government official serving in the post office, and finally rose to be Postmaster General of the United Provinces, and received from government the title Rai Bahadur. He was thus known as Rai Saligram Saheb Bahadur. Of his early life and his relations with the first Guru, whom he met in 1856, Max Mueller writes, "It seems that the horrors of the mutiny in 1857 made a deep impression on his mind. He saw thousands of men, women, and children butchered before his eyes, the rich reduced to poverty, the poor raised to unexpected and undeserved wealth, so that the idea of the world's impermanent and transient nature took complete possession of him and estranged him from all that had formerly enlisted his interest and occupied his energies. From his very youth, however, his mind had been filled with religious and philosophical questions, and he is said to have devoted much time from his youth onward, through all the years of his official life, to the study of the sacred scriptures. No wonder, therefore, that after witnessing the horrors of the mutiny and its suppression, he should have wished to flee from this den of misery, and to get happiness unalloyed and permanent, where alone it could be found. He went to consult several sannyasis and yogis, but they could not help him. At last, one of his colleagues at the post office remembered his elder brother as a spiritual guide who could be trusted. For 2 years he attended his lectures, compared his teaching with that of the Upanishads and other holy writings, and then became his devoted pupil, or chela. During his stay at Agra, he allowed no one else to serve his master. He used to grind the flour for him, cook his meals, and feed him with his own hands. Every morning he could be seen carrying a pitcher of pure water on his head for the Guru to bathe in, which he fetched from a place 2 miles distant. His monthly salary was also handed over to the saint, who used it for the support of his pupils, wife, and children, and spent the rest in charity. In 1878, on the death of the Guru, he became head of the sect, and retained his position until his death in 1898. His samadh, sacred tomb, is at Pipal Mandi, Agra. He left behind him several works in poetry called Prema Bani, love utterances, and Prema Patra, love letters, and a little manual in English called Radhasoami Mat Prakash, exposition of Radhasoami doctrine, from which our exposition of the teaching of the sect is taken. He also wrote several small treatises in Hindi and Urdu. It seems certain that the sect owes a great deal to this man's clear intellect and power of expression. The first Guru may have been the source of the leading ideas and of the religious practice of the sect, but one can scarcely doubt that the order and precision which now mark its teaching were the fruit of Saligram's vigorous and orderly mind. His title is Huzur Maharaj. The third Guru was a Brahmin of Bengali extraction, named Brahma Sankar Misra. He was born in Benares in 1861, quite near the place where Kabir taught. He received an English education and was a Master of Arts of Calcutta University. He held a position in the Accountant General's office, Allahabad. He joined the satsang in 1885. In 1898, he became the head of the sect. In 1902, he came to the conclusion that it was necessary, for the health of the satsang, to give it a well-expressed constitution and a definite organization. He created a central administrative council and had a constitution and bylaws drawn up. He left a few poems in Hindi, and he wrote 2 brief expositions of the faith for the census officers of the Punjab and of the United Provinces. When he died, he left in manuscript a volume of 300 pages called Discourses on Radhasoami Faith, which contains much more sound than sense. He left also a few letters in English, which have been published under the title Solace to Satsangis. He died in 1907. In Benares, where he died, they have purchased a famous house and garden. It used to be called Nandeshwar Koti, and at the close of the 18th century it was used as the residence of the British judge and magistrate of Benares. Here in 1799, Mr. Davis, the judge, was attacked by a body of native troops who had just killed the British resident. He placed himself at the top of a narrow staircase leading to the roof, and succeeded in defending himself, his wife, and 2 children with a spear, until he was rescued by a regiment of cavalry. The garden is now called the Radhasoami Garden. A fine building has been erected in it, which is used for the worship of the sect. It is a large hall with a gallery and a raised platform. At the back of the platform there is the tomb of the 3rd Guru, and on it there hangs his photograph, so that the faithful may look upon his face and adore him. His title is Maharaj Sahib. Since his death, the community has been unable to agree as to who is to be the next Guru. Until 1913, there were 2 prominent candidates, Mr. Sarkar Kamta Prasad of Murai, near Gazipur, and Mr. Madhava Prasad Sahib, who is the chief superintendent in the Accountant General's office, Allahabad. The former died in the autumn of 1913, so that Mr. Madhava Prasad Sahib has now a far better chance of being chosen. But there are groups who are unwilling to follow him, and at least 2 other candidates. 3. Thus far we have relied on the literature published by the sect, but there are many important facts which do not appear in the official books. For this further information, I am indebted to members of the sect or to people who were members but are no longer so. The first Guru was a man who had no Western education and did not know English. We may compare him with Ramakrishna. His wife, whose real name I have not discovered, was a woman of great piety and goodness. They acted together as religious teachers, although the Guru was probably the greater of the 2. There was no organization, no sect in those days. Disciples came to them and received instruction, and the photographs of both the man and his wife were given them to contemplate during their private meditations. The Guru belonged to a Vaishnava family, as we have already seen. His connections were with the Krishnite Gurus of Vrindavan. From time to time, he and his wife dressed up as Krishna and Radha to receive the worship of their disciples. The second Guru also got himself up as Krishna from time to time. Thus, the Guru worship of the sect was probably borrowed unchanged from the practices of the Gurus at Vrindavan. In February 1914, I was able to visit the Radhasoami Bagh, i.e. garden, some 4 miles outside Agra, where the tomb, Samadh, of the first Guru is. I was shown over the premises by Mr. Tota Ram, who was educated at Roorkee and served government as a civil engineer for years, but is now retired, and is both architect and builder of a fine new marble structure being erected over the Samadh. I was greatly interested to find 2 photographs hanging on the front of the Samadh, a woman and a man. I asked my guide who they represented. He answered that the woman was Radha and the man Swami, and then explained that they were the first Guru and his wife. He also said that Radha was not the woman's real name. So far as my information goes, it was the second Guru, Rai Saligram Sahib Bahadur, Guru of the sect from 1878 to 1898, who organized the satsang, systematized the teaching, and gave it its modern character. I have also been told that the sect owes its name to him. It is most noteworthy that this extraordinary name, Radhasoami, bears 4 significations in the sect. It is the name of God himself. It is the name which the first Guru bears, as the perfect incarnation of God. It is the sound which the spiritual sound current, sabda, makes as it rings through all regions. And It is the name of the sect. It is necessary also to realize that the real meaning of Radhasoami is Krishna, as Lord of Radha, his cowherd mistress in the latest cycle of the myth, and that Swami is only a curious phonetic misspell for Swami. How comes it that this name stands for God in a sect which rejects the whole Hindu pantheon? We can only conjecture until some scholar explores the Hindi writings of the first guru. But it almost seems as if, in the first instance, it had been applied to the first guru and his wife, as they showed themselves to their disciples in person and in portrait, and as they still appear on the Samad, and also in our reproduction of their portraits, and had then been applied to God, of whom the guru was held to be the full and perfect revelation. The third guru quotes a Hindi couplet said to be by Kabir, which is supposed, by transposition, to say that the name of God is Radhasoami. But the couplet is clearly a forgery. It nowhere occurs among the writings of Kabir, published or unpublished. The language is of a later date than Kabir, and the forger was a bungler. For, when transposed according to rule, the name reads Aradhaswami, and not Radhasoami. Note: I owe this criticism to my friend, the Reverend Ahmad Shah of Hamirpur, Uttar Pradesh. The cosmogony is curiously like the Buddhist scheme, which also has three planes or worlds: the formless world, the world of form, and the world of desire, each subdivided into sections. We may also compare the Theosophic scheme, which sets forth reality as existing in 7 distinct planes. Most of the conceptions of the sect are Hindu, and of these the majority are Vishnuite. God, the world, and the soul are recognized as realities. The soul is an amsa, or portion of God. The spirit current, sabda, which streams from the Supreme and is the source of all things, corresponds to the Sakti, or energy of God, in the Vaishnava and Saiva systems. Transmigration is retained. The doctrine of immortality shews traces of the Vaishnava conception that the soul retains its personality forever, but the incarnation doctrine differs very seriously from the Vaishnava idea, for it is men who become incarnate, and not God himself. 4. The practice of the sect is summed up in the phrase Surat Sabad Yoga, that is, union, yoga, of the human soul, Surat, with the spirit current or word, Sabda. The methods employed are unknown, for they are imparted by the guru to the disciple under a vow of secrecy. But it is clear that they are occult practices of a hypnotic nature such as are used in theosophy. There are hints in the literature that the initiate sees wonderful lights and extraordinary scenes, and wins supernatural powers. Instructions about the practice are given partly in meetings of the sect, in which the guru delivers lectures, partly in private, when he receives his disciples individually or in small groups. The guru gives his photograph to each disciple, that he may have it before him during his religious practice. The prescribed exercises, sadhanani, ought to be practiced from 2 to 3 hours every day. As to the powers of the Sant Satguru, Dr. Griswold writes, "The incarnate Sant Satguru, even while on earth, has his citizenship in the Radhasoami Dham, or realm. He is not controlled by the forces and currents which come from low levels of earthly lives. For, as in the state of somnambulism, all the functions of the body and senses are performed from a plane higher than that which the soul occupies in the wakeful state, so all the actions of the incarnations of the true Creator are regulated by the currents coming direct from the Supreme Being himself. The Sant Satguru who has attained to the highest stage of being might leave the body at any time and return to his own proper sphere. But he stays on earth a certain time for the salvation of believers. This is of his grace." We are told in the books that the sect recognizes no temples, shrines, or sacred places, except those sanctified by the presence of the guru or his relics. That the practice of the sect can be carried on anywhere. This is quite true, for the initiate can sit down with the photograph of his guru in front of him and practice his meditations and his exercises wherever he pleases, so long as he does it in secret. But for their meetings, the members of the sect prefer to have their own buildings, and the presence of either the living guru or the relics of one who has passed away. There are 3 relic shrines already in existence, each called Gurudwara, the Guru's chamber, 2 in Agra and 1 in Benares. Each Guru's photograph hangs on his tomb. In the daily meetings of the sect, portions of their own sacred books, or of the writings of Kabir and other Hindu saints, are read. There is a prayer, hymn singing, and an address by the Guru, if he is present, by some other one if he is not present. Besides these common practices, there is the adoration of the Guru or of his portrait. But of that I have received no detailed description. Several things are clear, however. We are told in the books that each member brings to the meeting with him a wreath of flowers, which he places round the neck of the Guru. The wreath is afterwards returned to him, filled with the spiritual power of the Guru. Everything that has touched him is charged with his sanctity and influence. All relics from his body, such as clothing, hair, nail parings, or water in which he has washed his feet, are sacred and precious. There are some very disgusting practices connected with this idea, certain products of his body being actually eaten or drunk by his followers. When he dies, his body is burnt, and his ashes mixed with water are swallowed by the faithful. The place where he resided is considered holy, and contemplation of his image is held to be contemplation of the Supreme Being. Radhaswamis are taught that there is no need for them to give up their life as householders and become monks. Indeed, the lives of the 3 gurus themselves show what is the ideal. Yet in spite of this, in the constitution of the satsang drawn up in 1902, a set of rules is given for the enrollment and conduct of Radhaswami monks. There is one side of Radhaswami influence which is very curious: their want of touch with modern movements. The gurus discourage study. The members show no national feeling whatsoever, nor any serious interest in the life of the country. If any member were to accept a public position of any prominence, he would be looked down upon. Economic, literary, or educational progress is no part of the ideal of the sect. This neglect of public affairs is what takes the place of the old ascetic renunciation. 5. The points that attract new members seem to be, first of all, the secrecy of the religious practice of the sect, with the hope connected therewith of gaining supernatural wisdom, enlightenment, and power. The living guru, believed to be an incarnation of God in the fullest possible sense, is a distinct attraction. Within the meetings of the sect there is a good deal of freedom. Men of all castes mix freely together, and even on occasion dine together in secret, and there is no strict separation of men and women. There is thus a sort of free, happy fellowship within each group of satsangis, as they call themselves. Finally, membership in the sect does not involve any breach with one's own religion. The fact that a man is a member of the sect is often kept secret. As in theosophy, you may be a Radhaswami and yet remain a Hindu, a Mohammedan, or a Christian. People are taught that all religions are true, and that the Radhaswami faith is an extra, fit to be the complement of any religion, and supreme over them all. Membership is thus made quite easy. Yet it is definitely stated that the religion is for all, and that outside the satsang there is no salvation. There is no proselytism in this sect, except insofar as the individual member may express his high appreciation of the Guru to his personal friends. One satsangi tried to make me realize how many miracles had accompanied the Gurus throughout their lives. They teach only people who wish to be taught, and they would rather win a few intelligent men than crowds of common people. 6. The affinities of the theology of the sect stand out quite clear. Most of the teaching is purely Hindu. It stands nearer to Vaishnavism than any other part of Hinduism, and is perhaps most closely allied to the teaching of Kabir. This is reflected in the practice of the sect. While they profess to find all truth in the books of their own gurus, they do use the writings of certain Hindu and Mohammedan saints, and amongst these they give Kabir the highest place. But, though the system is in the main Hindu and old, there are modern elements. There is an attempt to place religious leaders in the various spheres of the universe, according to their merit. And there are a number of Christian elements in the teaching. The unknown supreme is constantly called the Heavenly Father. His will is frequently emphasized. The satsangis are taught to seek his approbation. The Sant Satguru, who alone can reveal him, is called his beloved Son. God created man in his own image. Love is emphasized in the teaching of the sect in such a way as clearly to reveal its Christian origin, for it goes far beyond the old ideas connected with bhakti. Works of faith and charity, the spirit of service and prayer, are laid down as necessary duties. Finally, the forms of worship in the regular services, apart from the adoration of the Guru, are Christian. In this connection, however, nothing is more noteworthy than the many points in which Radhasoami and theosophical doctrine and practice coincide. The most important items are the unknowable supreme, the spheres and their regents, the human revealers of religion, the emphasis on the word, reincarnation, the use of methodical exercises, sadhanani, of a hypnotic character for the development of the spiritual powers and of the photograph of the Guru in meditation, the worship of Gurus, the supernatural powers of the Gurus, the claim that the teaching of the sect is scientifically accurate and verifiable in every particular esoteric teaching, secret practice, and all the talk about astral and higher planes, adepts, and such like. Literature. Radhasoami Mat Prakash by Rai Saligram Bahadur, Benares, 1896. For private circulation, 10 annas. This is by far the best presentation of Radhasoami doctrine in English. Discourses of Radhasoami Faith by Pandit Brahm Sankar Misra, Benares, The Satsang, 1909. This very verbose volume has a prefatory note which contains details about the three Gurus. For the other works of the Gurus, see above, pages 114, 115, and 116. The Radhasoami Sect by the Reverend H. D. Griswold, Ph.D., Kanpur Mission Press. The Radhasoamis and Theosophists by James Bissett Pratt in India and Its Faiths, 1915. Chapter 11. The Radhasoamis and Theosophists. Probably the reader is by this time quite tired of Hindu reformers and all their works, in spite of which I mean to devote one more chapter to them. For I have found the two movements, the names of which I have put at the head of this chapter, of considerable interest, and moreover, one of them is almost unknown in the West, while the other has exercised a specially dominant influence on the developing thought of modern India. The new religion now making considerable head in the United Provinces under the name the Radhasoami faith is a very different kind of reform movement from the two Samajas yet in some respects is even more typically Indian than they. It is interesting as a living example of the type of reform that so often arose in India before the influence of Christianity was felt in the land. It is purely religious in nature, with no active social program beyond a mild disapproval of caste restrictions. It recognizes but one God and no idols, has a purified form of worship based upon an elaborate psychology, regards its founder and leaders as incarnations of the divine, and aims at freeing the soul from the flesh. It was founded by a government employee in Agra named Shiva Dayal Singh, who evidently had done a good deal of independent thinking and felt the need of a purer form of worship, and who in 1861 made the discovery that he was an incarnation of the Supreme Being. Note: so at least I was informed by a member of the satsang in Benares. According to Farquhar, he was a banker. He also discovered the true name of the Supreme Being and many other important and interesting things, some of which shall be related in due course. As was natural in India, he found no difficulty in persuading a considerable number of people that he was God in the flesh, and thus he founded the new church and became its guru, or Maharaj. Note: such things need not seem strange to us Americans, at least, when we remember Joseph Smith, Prophet Elijah Dowie, and the Holy Ghost and us. When he died in 1878, one of his followers, Rai Saligram Saheb Bahadur by name, whom he had especially trained for the position, succeeded him as incarnation of God and Guru, or Sant Satguru, of the religious community, under the name Huzur Maharaj. This man was Postmaster General of the Northwest Provinces. Note: Rai Saligram seems to have been both an able administrator and a really spiritual teacher. Max Mueller gives a short account of him in his Life of Ramakrishna, including him among his 5 best-known Mahatmans of his time, along with Devendranath Tagore, Swami Dayanand, and Ramakrishna himself. He writes of him, in 1898, just before the Guru died. When last heard of, the old man was still alive, his house besieged every day by large numbers of persons, both male and female, who flock there from different parts of the country. He holds 5 meetings day and night for the purpose of imparting religious instruction, so that he has hardly more than 2 hours left for sleep. Everybody is welcome, and no distinction is made between Brahman and Sudra, rich and poor, good and bad. The people are convinced that he can work miracles, but he himself regards such things as unbecoming and below his dignity. He published the 2 vernacular books, one in verse and one in prose, which his predecessor had written, and wrote several himself, one of them in English, and died in 1898, passing on the leadership to Brahm Sankar Misra, who had manifested himself in 1861. Misra was a man of excellent education, holding the degree of M.A. from the Calcutta University, and possessed of a clear and pleasing English style. He was for a time an employee in the office of the Accountant General in Allahabad, and wrote a very readable book in English on the Radhasoami faith. He died in Benares in 1907. His successor, Madhava Prasad, is not a Sant Satguru or absolute incarnation of the Supreme, but only a highly advanced adept. He makes his headquarters in Allahabad, where he is chief superintendent in the office of the Accountant General. The new movement has steadily grown, chiefly in the United Provinces, and claims to have nearly 100,000 members. In point of numbers, therefore, it is almost on an equality with the Parsis. This new faith claims to have the advantage over all other religions of being founded on science, and perfectly demonstrable. And indeed, if reference to nerve ganglia, ions, and positive and negative poles, combined with excellent English, prove the presence of science, the last book of the Maharajas is strictly scientific, But, in common with the Radhasoami Mat Prakash of the second Maharaj, it also has the greater advantage of being infallibly inspired, being written by God Himself, in the flesh. A brief resume of the teachings of these two books should therefore certainly be of great interest to the reader. God is the source or ocean of all force. He is spirit force, and from Him all natural forces come. He permeates the universe as sunlight pervades empty space, and our souls are part of Him, though for a while imprisoned in these material bodies. Now, if the faculty of hearing is sufficiently developed, all force currents could be heard as sounds. God being force can therefore be heard, and His true name will be the sound made by the Supreme Spirit Force. The gurus of the new religion are able to hear this sound and tell us what it is. The sound in articulate speech of the spirit current is Radha, and that of the spiritual focus or reservoir is Swami. Radhasoami is accordingly held to be the true and real name of the Supreme Creator, and its sound, which resounds in the innermost quarter of all regions, and can be heard by a devotee of the Radhasoami sect when the faculty of hearing inherent in his spirit is developed by the process of devotional practice prescribed by the Radhasoami faith. Note: from the report of Maharaj Saheb, Brahm Sankar Mishra, to the Census Office, printed as an appendix to his book, Discourses on the Radhasoami Faith, Benares, Radhasoami Satsang, 1909, page 303. It is said that in their doctrine of the divine name and its importance, the Radhasoamis have been influenced by the doctrine of the Word, or Logos, in St. John's Gospel. There are in the universe 3 spheres. The highest of these is pure spirit, and in it dwells Radhasoami, though present by his force currents everywhere. The second, known as Brahmand, is spiritual material. The third is material spiritual. Each of these has 6 subdivisions. In the last dwells man, an immortal soul, or eternal and divine spark, in a material body. Man is a microcosm of the universe and has 6 principal nerve ganglia, corresponding to the 6 divisions of each sphere. His spirit, which is distinct from his mind, has its seat, shades of Descartes, on the highest of these, namely the pineal gland, midway between the 2 eyes, 3/4 of 1 inch from the root of the nose inwards. From this headquarters it perceives through the various sense organs by sending out force currents to them. But it also has relations with the upper worlds. In the fissure between the 2 lobes of the brain are 12 apertures, which provide the means of communication with the 6 subdivisions of Brahmand and of the purely spiritual region. The apertures appertaining to Brahmand are to be found in the gray matter, and those appertaining to the purely spiritual region in the white matter. If man fails to make use of these channels for communion with the upper worlds, he must continue to be born again and again indefinitely, for the new revelation teaches the old doctrine of transmigration. But the aim of man is to become free from the chains of flesh, and at length to attain to pure spirituality, and to return to God, who is our home. A moral life is, of course, essential to attaining this aim, but it is only the first step. Certain methods for enabling the soul to quit the body temporarily, or hold communion with the upper spheres during this present life, are taught by the new faith, and the practice of these, carried on through this and several more incarnations, will enable the individual at length to win perfect spiritual freedom from all body. To learn these methods there is need of a guru, who is himself in communication with one of the upper worlds. There have been many such gurus or adepts, but there were never any incarnations until, the ground for the spiritual regeneration of man having been prepared by the advent of these various lesser gurus and adepts, Radhasoami sent down rays from his very self, which assumed human form in the first Maharaj. The Radhasoami faith must therefore not be considered in any sense a reform or an offshoot of Hinduism, or as in any way a product of human traditions or cogitations. Says the second Sant Satguru in his authoritative work, the Radhasoami faith is not built on the basis of scriptures appertaining to Hindu or any other religion, but on the precepts or instructions of the Supreme Being himself, who appeared on this earth in human form and graciously performed the functions of a Sant Satguru for the benefit of degraded humanity. Such an incarnation is a kind of focus of the divine rays and carries on by the deity's direct impulse the work appertaining to the object for which the incarnation was ordained. There have been but 3 such incarnations, namely the 3 Maharajas of the Radhasoami faith. They alone of religious teachers come directly from the first or purely spiritual region. All other extant religions have for their goal the second or spiritual material region, which is subject to decay and dissolution. This region is not clearly mentioned in the tenets of the extant religions, but allusions and hints about it are to be found in their holy books. Only one initiated in esoteric teachings can comprehend these hints. But such adepts are very rare, and only those initiated in the Radhasoami faith can at present understand the esoteric teachings of all other religions also, and form a correct idea of the attitude of each. The importance of a living guru to aid the disciple in ascending to these dizzy heights is now plain. The Radhaswamis think, and with good reason, that the Sikhs and the followers of Kabir have degenerated just because they have so long been without a living guru, and they are determined to profit by the mistakes of their predecessors and never be any length of time without an incarnation of the deity, or at least an adept who has climbed to the top of the second spiritual sphere. The ascension of a spirit from its ordinary seat to higher planes is possible only when a living adept is present. It is not necessary that the disciple must always be in the personal company of the adept. So long as the adept is alive, his spirituality is kinetic on higher planes, and he can extend help even when the disciple is away from him at a distance. There are 3 great methods by which the soul may begin its ascent toward the upper regions. These are 1. Utterance of the spiritual name by the spirit current, 2. Contemplation of the spiritual form, and 3. Attentively listening to the spiritual sound. Each of these methods is based on science. Since every force has its sound, by reproducing the sound of a spirit force, we may gain some of the power of that force, and by tuning, as it were, our soul and body to that sound, we may put ourselves into harmony with it. My exposition here, I confess, is very unscientific, but the interested reader will consult the sources. The effects to be attained by proper repetition of the holy syllables are certainly remarkable. All obstacles thrown in the way, and traps laid by universal mind and matter, to stop or interfere with the progress of a pilgrim to the high mansions of the Supreme Being in pure spiritual regions, disappear at once on the pronunciation of the holy name Radhasoami by the devotee. Such is the immediate effect and beneficial influence exercised by this almighty name. It at once strikes awe and terror in the heart of the conflicting agents and revolting forces met with by the devotee while traversing the material regions, and gradually removes them altogether from his path. As to the second of the methods, contemplation, it is a well-known fact that we grow like that which we willingly contemplate, and also that spiritual facts get themselves recorded in facial expression. The outward marks are specially noticeable on the forehead and in the eyes of an adept, and the effect of these marks on advanced devotees in producing concentration and sublimation of spirit is very remarkable. And the effect of contemplating an incarnation is, of course, doubly great. Hence the practice of gazing at the Maharaj, or, during an interregnum, at the pictures of past Maharajas. The third method, that of listening attentively to the spiritual sound, is the most difficult of the three, and only the more advanced can really succeed in hearing it. Yet it is quite possible. For Radhasoami, the true name is present everywhere in creation, and can be heard at the innermost plane where the spirit current is acting. As each ray from the sun carries with it the constitutional components of the sun, similarly the prime action by focus and current, which are the constitutional components of creation in the beginning, is carried in the tiniest ray of spirit. And the sound, Radhasoami, could be heard in miniature, if we could penetrate the surrounding layers and reach the innermost quarter occupied by the spirit ray. The details of the three methods as actually practiced are not made public, but are divulged to members of the sect on initiation. There is something rather beautiful in this conception that, were the hearing of our spirit not deadened by its enwrapping mortal coil, we should hear everywhere throughout the universe whispered the name of God. There's not the smallest orb which thou beholdest, but in his motion like an angel sings, still choiring to the young-eyed cherubims. Such harmony is in immortal souls. But whilst this muddy vesture of decay doth grossly close it in, we cannot hear it. There are centers of the Radhasoami faith at Agra, Allahabad, and Benares. Their building in the latter city is one of the most prominent in town. It is situated in a beautiful garden, which is carefully and tastefully kept up. The building itself consists of a large hall, with a screened gallery at one end and a marble platform at the other. In short, it has much the appearance of a Protestant church. There are, of course, no idols or anything of the sort, the room being quite bare except for large pictures of the three departed gurus. The ashes of the last of the three rest beneath the marble platform from which he used to teach, while at the sides of the platform are two small rooms, each of which contain his picture and also a large divan. On these divans the late guru used to sit, in Oriental fashion, while teaching the inner circle of his disciples, and hence they are regarded as being full of spiritual magnetism and as sending out ethereal vibrations. Twice a day the faithful gather in this hall for public service, at morning and evening. The women sit in the screened gallery, the men on the floor, and one of their number, standing at the reading desk on the floor, reads to them from some inspired book written by one of the great gurus. For as I have said, though they reverence the Vedas, they regard only the writings of the incarnations of Radhasoami as really inspired and authoritative. No one but the guru may teach from the platform, and the present guru is at Allahabad. The following description of a service at which the guru presides is from the inspired pen of the last guru himself. The service commences with the recitation, in which all the members of the congregation can take part, of certain holy pieces which contain a grateful expression of the immense spiritual benefit conferred by the gracious Supreme Creator in revealing the true path of salvation. The service closes with another recitation of the description given above, but the subject matter of the holy pieces is different. The holy books compiled by the saints are also read out. Such portions of these books as do not admit of easy comprehension are explained by the presiding adept, or made the text of a holy discourse. Other discourses also are frequently delivered. While the books are being read out, the members of the congregation are simultaneously attentive, to some extent, to their devotional practice, especially of contemplation, which is rendered easy in consequence of the inspired subject matter of the holy books they are listening to. Concurrently with this, the process for the purification of mind and the eradication of evil desires is also at work. The root of all evils is ignorance. In the presence of a saint, this ignorance is dispelled to some extent, and his serene and sacred company is at times alone sufficient to disclose the shortcomings of the members of the congregation and to generate true contrition. The surroundings of the satsang, or the meeting, the presence of the adept in his discourses, produce also great effect upon the faculty of religious emotion. And as the devotee makes progress in his spiritual practice, gradually the satsang affords such exquisite emotional ecstasies to him that all pleasures of this world dwindle into insignificance, and the entire service is one of engrossing rapture. The presiding adept is sometimes garlanded before the commencement of the service, and garlands sanctified by his touch are distributed to the members of the congregation. Sweets or some other light article of food are also sometimes distributed after sanctification by the adept. They constitute, as it were, the sacrament of the satsang. For an elect inner circle, there are additional means of spiritual assistance. Articles of food left in the dishes after an adept has finished his meals, clothes and garments worn by him, and the water used for the ablution of his feet are considered to be highly spiritualized, and used by such of the disciples as get an opportunity to obtain them. Disciples are also sometimes allowed to touch the feet of an adept with their forehead, the object being that the spirituality, which is more or less flowing out from the feet of the adept, might be imbibed by them. At times, disciples are permitted to gaze intently at the eyes of an adept, and he also directs his gaze similarly at the eyes and forehead of the devotees engaged in this practice. The spiritual concentration during such moments is very great, and the devotees who are performing this practice are filled within themselves with rapturous bliss. Only the more advanced may enjoy the great privilege of using the water in which an adept has bathed his feet, but admission to the outer circle of membership is open to all, without reference even to caste. The Radhasoami faith has room even for the despised sweeper, and within its hospitable walls distinctions of birth are thrown aside, and only spirituality counts. The only conditions required for embracing the Radhasoami religion are abstinence from meat and animal food, and liquor, and all intoxicating drugs, and a conviction that the goal of the Radhasoami faith is the only true goal of true and perfect salvation. Yet the sect makes no active attack upon caste or upon any other social evil. The morality which it preaches is pure, but is of a decidedly negative nature. This is rather forcibly brought out in the late Guru's second report to the Census Bureau, in which he says, "The moral code of the Radhasoami faith consists, so far as our actions towards others are concerned, in withholding ourselves from such acts as we would that others should not do to us." The truth is, the Radhasoamis are emphatically quietists. Mystic cultivation of their own souls is their great aim, and active social work is regarded as dangerous. The Radhasoami Sect in India, by Hervey DeWitt Griswold in East and West, originally published as a separate pamphlet in 1906. The Radhasoami Sect in India. This is a sect which originated in the United Provinces. The present spiritual head, Pandit Brahma Shankar Misra Premanand, is a Master of Arts at the Calcutta University. He was born in Benares, but now lives in Allahabad, where he holds a position of responsibility in the Accountant General's office. He has been the head of the sect since 1898. Pandit Brahma Shankar Misra, M.A., was preceded by Rai Bahadur Saligram, a retired Postmaster General of the Northwest Provinces, who was head of the sect for 20 years, that is, from 1878 to 1898, the year of his death. Rai Saligram was a native of Agra. The preceptor of Saligram and founder of the Radhasoami sect was a certain Tulsi Ram, better known by the name of Shiv Dayal Sahib. He was born at Agra in 1818 and died in 1878. He belonged to an old and respectable family of Khatris and was a banker by profession. Thus, the three leaders of the sect have all been men of affairs, and not sannyasis in the technical sense. In this respect, they differ from Swami Dayanand Saraswati, the founder of the Arya Samaj, and Saint Chetram, the founder of the Chetrami sect. They have also been men of considerable education, one of them an M.A., and another a high official in the postal department. The Radhasoami religion is to some extent a secret religious society. My most important source of information has been a former member of the Radhasoami sect, who after being for 13 or 14 years in the fellowship of the Radhasoami Society, was baptized in 1902 at Allahabad. In 1898, a student of the Foreman Christian College, who was also a member of the Radhasoami sect, gave me a fair amount of information, which was embodied in an article published in the Nur Afshan, October 14, 1898. I have secured access to only one book published by the sect, namely the Sar Bachan, a work in Hindi poetry from the pen of the founder, and regarded, I understand, as most authoritative. The key to the theology of the Radhasoami sect is to be found in its cosmology. There are 18 stages, or spheres, or worlds, or abodes of being, and salvation consists in going on, by progressive realization, to the highest or last stage, which is known as the Radhasoami world. A classification of the 18 stages of being, i.e., of the universe, under 3 grand divisions, is made on the basis of the relative proportions of mind and matter in each grand division. The lowest grand division is called material-spiritual. Here, matter is primary and spirit secondary. Hence, matter dominates over spirit, whose action is feeble and never manifested except through material covers. The second grand division is called spiritual material. Here, spirit is primary and matter secondary. That is, spirit dominates over matter, which exists in a very pure and subtle form. The third and highest grand division is called spiritual. It is the realm of pure spirit, where spirit exists uncontaminated with matter. It is also called Dayal Desh, or the region of mercy. All this indicates that the sect holds a realistic doctrine of matter as something entirely different from mind, although it may exist in combination with mind. In harmony with this, we are told that the Radhaswamis are opposed to the doctrine of Advaita and recognize the separate existence of God, the soul, and matter. This furnishes a point of contact with the Arya Samaj. The names for the 3 grand divisions in the terminology of the sect are 1. Pind, body, the universe of coarse matter. 2. Brahmanda, the region of universal mind. And 3. Nirmal Chaitanya, the stage of pure spirit. Body, mind, spirit. These terms, applied to divisions of the cosmos, suggest a parallelism between the individual and the universe. In other words, they suggest the doctrine that man is a microcosm, standing over against the macrocosm. What is suggested here is actually the doctrine of the Radhasoami sect, for the present head of the sect declares that the human frame represents on a small scale the whole creation. This is but the reappearance of an idea found frequently in the early philosophical literature of India, namely, that the body as a whole parallels the universe as a whole. This being so, the 18 subdivisions of the macrocosmos are to be found in miniature in the microcosmos, i.e., their analogues exist in the human frame. To quote again from the present head of the sect, the 6 subdivisions of the lowest region, or pind, are to be found in the human frame, as the 6 ganglia, or nervous centers. Similar ganglia, of which the above 6 are reflex images, are to be found in Brahmand. The gray matter of the brain comprises these 6 centers, and they correspond with the 6 spheres of Brahmand. The purely spiritual region corresponds with the white matter of the brain, and 6 centers are to be found therein, which correspond with the 6 spheres of the region of mercy, all of which represents a queer jumbling together of ancient physiological ideas connected with the yogi doctrine of different centers or lotuses in the body, e.g., the lotus of the navel, the lotus of the heart, etc., and of modern physiological science, which speaks of nerve ganglia, gray matter of the brain, white matter of the brain, and so forth. The counterpart in the human organism of the 6th and highest subdivision of the material spiritual region is referred to as situated midway between the 2 eyes at the root of the nose. This place is declared to be 1/2 inch within the brain. The principal subdivisions of the region of pure spirit are 4, namely Sat Lok, Alak Lok, Agam Lok, and Radhasoami Lok. The last is declared to be the abode of the true Supreme Creator, Radhasoami Dayal. It is the final stage of blessedness, and the goal of the soul's pilgrimage. Beneath it, as already pointed out, are various stages of spiritual realization, milestones, as it were, in the soul's journey toward final emancipation. The most important stages, as given in the descending order, are as follows. First below the supreme stage is the Agam Desh, or unapproachable country. Then the Alak Desh, or unseen country. These 2 stages are described as entirely free from Maya. Maya is the covering of spirit, whichever takes place below the Satlok. This covering of spirit on the part of Maya is subtle in Brahmanda, sometimes called Kaldesh, the region of death, and coarse and powerful in Pind, the lowest grand division of all. Hence, this lowest region may be called Maya Desh par excellence, for here Maya overpowers the spirit and reigns supreme. The present universe is in the lowest, or Maya Desh. It may be interesting to learn who are placed in the various stages and how far, in the judgment of the Radhasoami people, the various religions of the world have advanced towards the final goal. Those who have attained to the 6th subdivision from the bottom, i.e., Tisra Til, are called yogis. To the 9th subdivision, Yogeshwar, Jnani, and Sadguru. To the 12th subdivision, Sant. And all who have gone further are called Param Sant. Whosoever has the right to the title of Radhasoami, as for example the successive heads of the Radhasoami sect, namely Shiv Dayal Sahib, Rai Saligram, and apparently Brahma Shankar Misra, has attained to the Radhasoami Lok, the final stage of possible spiritual realization. Kabir Sahib, the founder of the Kabir Panth, and Tulsi Sahib, the guru of Shiv Dayal Sahib, attained to the Agamlok, or unapproachable country. The Satlok has been reached by Guru Nanak, as well as by many others, e.g. Dadu Sahib, Surdas, Charandas, et al., all heroes of the Bhakti Mala. Mohammedans also have attained to this stage of existence, e.g. Maulana Rum and Bu Ali Sahib Qalandar, both of whom were Sufis. The second grand division, stages 7 to 11, or the world of subtle matter, is peopled by the various avatars and incarnations, e.g. Ram and Krishna, and the rishis and munis, as well as by Christ. The Radhasoami people say that Christ attained only to the 7th stage, Sahasdal Kamal. As regards the goal of all religions except the Radhasoami faith, the present head of the sect remarks, all the extant religions have, for their goal, the spheres comprised in the 2nd grand division of the spiritual material region, and are subject to decay and dissolution, because matter is mutable, and regions subject to its influence, however subtle it may be, sooner or later undergo change. Finally, the lowest grand division is inhabited by all the rest. Mohammed Sahib got no further than stage 6, the yogi state. The great majority of all mankind are declared to be living in the Maya Desh, below stage 6, and so in the world of sense and sin. We now come to the difficult problem of the theology or doctrine of God in the Radhasoami sect. Here I must speak with a certain hesitancy and reserve. Let us begin with a quotation from the present head of the sect. Radhasoami is the real name of the Supreme Creator. If the faculty of hearing is sufficiently developed, all force currents could be heard as sound. The Supreme Creator evolved this creation by his spiritual currents. Spirit force is the force of attraction, love, and intelligence or intention. Like other forces in its creative action, it acts by focus and currents emanating therefrom. The sound and articulate speech of the spirit current is Radha, and that of the spiritual focus or reservoir is Swami. The name Radhasoami is accordingly held to be the true and real name of the Supreme Creator, and its sound, which resounds in the innermost quarter of all regions, can be heard by a devotee of the Radhasoami sect, when the faculty of hearing inherent in his spirit is developed by the process of devotional practice prescribed by the Radhasoami faith. This name was given out by Radhasoami, the Supreme Creator himself, when he made his advent in this world as Sant Satguru, or true supreme guide and preceptor, in human form. On this I remark, 1. The Radhasoami sect is at one with the Kabir Panth in the emphasis placed on the doctrine of Shabad, the creative word. Though the first chapter of St. John's Gospel is quoted in the description of the Spirit, a distinction is made between the Word, according to St. John, and that of the Radhasoami, the former being considered to belong to the 2nd and 3rd divisions of the universe, and the latter to the 1st. According to acoustics, sound presupposes air waves and a center or starting point where the waves begin. Moreover, physical science postulates many different waves besides air waves. The Radhasoami doctrine seems to be that, given a sufficient development of the faculty of hearing, all vibrations without exception, ether vibrations and heat vibrations, as well as air vibrations, can be heard as sound. There are spiritual currents as well as material currents and vibrations. These also can be heard as sounds by the adept. Spiritual force, like all other forces which are propagated by vibrations, acts by focus and currents emanating therefrom. The name of the spiritual focus or mysterious force of all energy is Swami, and the name of the spirit current emanating therefrom is Radha. The combination of the two names gives Radhasoami, which is regarded as the name of the Supreme Creator and Lord of all. Thus, if Radha is the name for force, Swami is the name for the Lord of force. All this acoustic chatter about waves and forces and currents emanating from a focus, together with what we have had about the gray matter and the white matter of the brain, pineal gland, etc., furnishes a sufficient explanation of the statement that this religion professes to be based on purely scientific grounds, and nothing is to be accepted which cannot be comprehended by facts, natural laws, and phenomena observable in this world. 2. In the quotation from the present head of the sect, a threefold distinction is apparently recognized in the deity. There is first Swami, the Lord of all and the great first cause, concerning whom nothing can be predicated. This reminds us of the Nirguna or Shuddha Brahma of the Vedantists, to which, if any attribute be ascribed, the proper answer is neti, neti. Not so, not so. We are also reminded of the Gnostic conception of God as the unfathomable abyss, unnameable and incomprehensible. The second distinction is Radha, the creative spirit, energy, or word, which emanates from Swami and proceeds downward on its creative errand. The combination of the two names in the compound name Radhasoami was originally an epithet of Krishna and meant simply the Lord of Radha. Thus, the name belonged originally to the vocabulary of Vaishnavism, and accordingly the Radhasoami sect may be regarded as a reformed Vaishnava sect. It is interesting to note that the Krishna of popular Hinduism is regarded by the Radhasoami people as a demon. Radha, not only in its original reference to the chief mistress of Krishna, but also in its usage in the Radhasoami sect, is feminine. Swami is sometimes called the Supreme Father, and, in like manner, Radha is called the Supreme Mother. The third distinction is the incarnation of the Supreme Creator himself, when he made his advent in this world as a Sant Satguru, or true supreme guide and preceptor in human form. The Sant Satguru is described as an incarnation of the Supreme Being, or else one who has reached the highest division under the direction of an incarnate Sant Satguru. As already remarked, those who attain to the Radhasoami world, the highest heaven of bliss in the Radhasoami eschatology, become like Radhasoami, but without losing their personal identity. This reminds us of the ecstatic assurance of the Apostle John that, "When he shall appear, we shall be like him." Absorption, in the pantheistic sense, is rejected. The relation between Radhasoami and the soul which has attained to the final stage is declared to be the same as that between water and a fish in the water. The fish, on the one hand, is not separate from the water, but on the other, the fish does not turn into water. Radhasoami Dayal manifested himself to the world in 1861 AD. The incarnate Sant Satguru, even while on earth, has his citizenship in the Radhasoami Dham. He is not controlled by the forces and currents which come from the low levels of earthly life, for, as in the state of somnambulism, all the functions of the body and senses are performed from a plane higher than that which the soul occupies in the wakeful state. So all the actions of the incarnations of the true Creator are regulated by the currents coming direct from the Supreme Being himself. The Sant Satguru, who has attained to the highest stage of being, might leave the body at any time and return to his own proper sphere. But he stays on earth a certain time, for the salvation of believers. This is of his grace. We pass on now to describe the essential spiritual practice of the sect, which is known as Surat Shabad Yoga, or practice of the spirit and word. We are told that exaltation of the spirit by the aid of the spiritual current, which is perceived as sound internally, to the pure region of spirit, which is the only true abode of perfect emancipation and salvation, constitutes the devotional practice of the Radhasoami faith. And in another place it is written, "The second person of the Trinity has been described as the original spirit, and prime origin of force in the universe. Arising from it is a spirit current of every living thing. As the tendency of Brahm, or the universal mind, and still more so that of matter, is downward, this spirit current naturally flows from the brain, through an internal orifice in the body, towards the 9 external orifices. The object of the Surat Shabad Yoga is to change the direction of this, so that the human spirit may rise towards the source from which the spirit came, instead of descending to lower depths. This idea is compared with the Pran Yoga of Orthodox Hinduism, which consists in suspending the breath and drawing it up to the ganglion behind the point between the eyes. But the Radhaswamis say that Pran Yoga is dangerous to health, and, moreover, though it is useful to liberate the spirit from the bondage of coarse matter, it does not go far enough, as the breath is merely an agent of the spirit current and not the spirit itself. The actual practices connected with the Surat Shabad Yoga must be learned from a Sant Satguru, or a Sadguru, but the exercise is facilitated by prayer, which must be a genuine effort of the mind. The repetition of mere holy words or names is only of use to concentrate the spirit, but to obtain real spiritual benefit, it is necessary that the sounds issuing from the highest division should be heard internally. It is not claimed that the practice will aid in performing miracles, or in the acquisition of supernatural powers, though some adherents have obtained these. But sincere devotees, who only wish to approach the Supreme Being, will have beatific visions, which they must not divulge, and will be comforted in their daily life. The practice of Surat Shabad Yoga requires from 2 to 3 hours a day, and may be performed whenever convenient by day or by night, all at once or in successive installments. A secluded place should be chosen for it whenever possible. If unbelievers are present, a veil should be used during the practice. Animal food, strong drink, and intoxicating drugs are prohibited as detrimental to the inward concentration and exaltation of the spiritual current. In other words, as detrimental to the proper performance of the spiritual practice prescribed by the Radhasoami faith. And herein lies the test of the goodness and badness of actions. Acts, including spiritual practice, which tend to free the spirit from matter and raise it to its source, are good, and those which tend to degrade it are bad. It is from this point of view that great moderation is recommended in the enjoyment of food and sleep. The amount of food used should be diminished, we are told, by 1/3 or 1/4, and should be eaten very slowly. And during the 24 hours, one should sleep only from 5 to 7 hours. And not only is there the prohibition of the use of animal flesh and all intoxicants in the interest of the spirit's warfare against the flesh, but also for the same reason, the frequenting of shows and spectacles, the needless walking through bazaars, the use of gorgeous raiment, and all idle conversation are forbidden. The religious meetings of this sect are held in private houses after the manner of the early Christians, and are very simple in their character, consisting of singing, reading from the sacred scriptures of the sect, and an address from the Sant Satguru, if he be present. The following is a description furnished by an eyewitness of an extraordinary religious service in Allahabad, the Sant Satguru himself presiding. Their meetings are held in an ordinary Hindustani house of fairly large size, in a courtyard enclosed on the 2 ends and one side by galleries, and on the other side by a high wall, and protected from sun and rain by a canvas cover. The side gallery is enclosed by a parda of white cotton cloth, except at one end where the Guru's platform stands, half in the gallery and half in the corner of the courtyard. As one enters by a door into one of the end galleries, picking one's way through an interesting collection of footwear, and stops by request to add one's own to the pile, one sees before him some 200 or 300 neatly dressed and intelligent-looking men sitting on the white floorcloth of the courtyard, while at one corner sits the Guru on his platform, and beyond this, through the gap in the parda, appears a sea of women's faces in the gallery, and the interior part of the house. When one has picked one's way as carefully through the seated devotees as through the shoes at the entrance, and found a seat among them in the breeze of the panka, one has time, while a venerable blind man and two companions in a corner behind him sing plaintive bhajans from plush-covered books, to study the Guru and his surroundings. He is, as his name indicates, of Bengali Brahmin origin, is an M.A. of the Calcutta University, and occupies a high position as superintendent of one of the departments of the Accountant General's office. But he does not present an appearance either of great intellectuality or of great spirituality, as he sits on his platform supported by silken cushions. He is a man of medium complexion and of medium stature, and wears a thin muslin kurta and dhoti only. Above his platform is a richly embroidered canopy, and a gaily colored panka fans him, occasionally supplemented by a peacock brush in the hands of a disciple, one of his own sons, I think, seated beside the platform. As we study his face, we see that he has a good forehead, prominent brows, overhanging deep-set eyes, a somewhat long aquiline nose, and a large mouth and ears. His style is didactic or argumentative, but never earnest. He says the superstitious and idolatrous are beneath contempt, and wants none such to join his fold, only the select and favored few. He often indulges in a form of wit which does not appeal very strongly to outsiders, and apparently not even to his own disciples. The name of a religious gathering of Radhasoami people is satsang, and the members of the sect are called satsangis. In all meetings where the head of the sect is not present, practically everywhere except in Allahabad, the picture of the Guru takes the place of the living Guru, and receives the veneration which he would receive if he were present. In cities where many of the members work in offices, the chief weekly meeting is held on Sunday. In addition to this, there are frequently held daily meetings where a few gather together for worship and devotion. The Bible of the sect consists of the writings of its successive Sant Satgurus. The Sarbachan, already mentioned, is the work of the first Guru, Shiv Dayal Sahib. Rai Saligram Sahib wrote the Prem Bami in 4 volumes, and the Prem Patra in 5 or 6 volumes. While the sacred books of other religions are regarded with a certain respect, it is held that the teachings of Shiv Dayal Sahib and Rai Saligram are superior to them all. They alone are infallibly true, and they alone point out the way of salvation. Next to these are placed the writings of Kabir and Guru Nanak. As regards moral teaching, we are told that the moral code of the Radhasoami faith for the regulation of worldly affairs is that you should act as you would that others should act towards you. In this sense, all men are regarded as brothers. The doctrine of transmigration is taught. Those who give themselves fully to Guru Bhakti and the practice of Surat Shabad Yoga may attain to the final stage of the Radhasoami bliss after only 2 or 3 births. For one who has reached the Radhasoami world, there is no rebirth. This is Asli Mukti, real and true salvation. It is held that out of the Radhasoami Church there is no salvation in this full and perfect sense, although it is admitted that each of the religions of the world may help its devotees to make some progress toward the ultimate goal. It is what might be called ordinary salvation to attain to Daswan Dwar, the 9th stage, and, as it were, the halfway house on the road to the Radhasoami abode. But this halfway attainment does not deliver from rebirth. Those who attain to Sat Lok are not born again into this world, but abide in everlasting joy and are furnished with a spiritual body. There is a strange attitude taken in the matter of the public confession of the Radhasoami faith. We read as follows: The faith does not require any change in profession or the abandonment of family ties. In fact, it is distinctly laid down that as the sole outward sign required is the doing good to others, and the inward mark is the private practice of Surat Shabad Yoga, it is quite optional to believers publicly to renounce their former creed or not. Verily, the entrance into the Radhasoami faith is not by way of the cross. The adherents of this sect are said to be found all over India. If the various provinces be mentioned in the order in which they contain members of the Radhasoami sect, the order will be the Punjab, United Provinces, Bengal, etc. Thus, the Radhasoami people seem to be the most numerous in the Punjab, especially in the Ludhiana district. It is estimated that there were 3,000 or 4,000 followers gathered during the lifetime of the founder, Shiv Dayal Sahib. In the census of 1901, over 15,000 members are returned for the United Provinces. We may perhaps assume that the number in the Punjab is equal or even greater. This would make at least 30,000 members for all India, by not counting more than the United Provinces and the Punjab. But it must be remembered that the sect requires no change in profession. This fact makes the enrollment of members a very easy thing, and often doubtless a meaningless thing. It is claimed that a large number of educated people have joined this society. All classes are received: Hindus, Mohammedans, Christians, Jainis, Churas, Chamars, in fact, everybody. My leading informant had himself initiated a Christian. An Englishman and his wife were also received. The program of this sect, like that of every reforming sect of modern India, is universalistic. The hope is cherished that all the people of the world will finally embrace the Radhasoami faith. The members of this sect glory in their religion as being practical. They believe that nothing will be able to stand before it. They lay great stress upon their own science, but regard the science of ordinary scientists as more or less erroneous. Theoretically, caste is not observed. It is allowable for all members to eat together. But actually, on account of the prejudices of weak brethren, the theory remains largely a mere sentiment. As regards the points of contact between the Radhasoami faith and other systems, it has already been shown that this faith is but a modern Hindu form of the ancient Gnosticism. The doctrine that matter is essentially evil, that creation is the result of spirit falling somehow under the power of matter, and that salvation consists in the deliverance of spirit from the bondage of matter. These three doctrines are common both to the ancient Gnosticism and to the Radhasoami faith. Thus, the Radhasoami system is an old foe in a new dress. But the ancient Gnosticism was essentially theosophical. In like manner, the modern Hindu type of Gnosticism, known as the Radhasoami faith, has fundamental points of contact with modern theosophy. Much of the terminology is common to the two systems. Thus, the present head of the sect in his article, published in the Report of the Census of India for 1901, Volume 17, pages 131 to 132, speaks of the astral and higher planes, esoteric teachings, adepts, astral or subtle environments which accompany the spirit at the time of death, etc. One statement is practically identical with one of the latest utterances made by the High Priestess of Theosophy, Mrs. Annie Besant. The statement is this: unless the spirit can, at the will of the devotee of the Radhasoami faith, leave the body and reach the highest spiritual spheres, his devotion has not resulted in the attainment of the object in view. The Gnosticism which preyed upon the early church was a spurious and counterfeit form of the religion of Jesus Christ. External resemblance without inward reality constitutes the very nature of a counterfeit. Some of the points of contact between the Radhasoami faith and Christianity are almost startling. Thus, the Radhasoami religion has a doctrine of the Trinity, a doctrine of a Messiah who has come in human form, and who is at once the image of the invisible God and the supreme teacher for all mankind, a doctrine of the spirit or energy of God, Radha, which as a spirit current pervades all things, a doctrine of the Supreme Father, Swami, who is the Lord of all and the great first cause. It has a supreme moral law in the shape of the Golden Rule. It has a universal message for all mankind. It has a doctrine of the Word of God, conceived both as a canon of Holy Scripture and as an inward, spiritual, and eternal word, Shabad. But these resemblances are relatively external. The most fundamental note of the gospel of Jesus Christ, that to divine love which suffers in order to save, is left unsounded. That which is the greatest stumbling block to the natural heart of man is left unmentioned. The doctrine of the cross finds no place in the Radhasoami system. The Radhasoami faith may be looked at from opposite points of view. We may see in it an evidence of the leavening effect of Christian ideas in India, and from this point of view we may well give thanks to God for every particle of truth which is found in this sect. On the other hand, the Radhasoami religion may be regarded as a skillful counterfeit of the truth put forward by Satan, the god of this world, in order to blind the eyes of men, that the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God, should not dawn upon them. The Radhasoami sect is clearly a disintegrating and dissolving force, continually gnawing at the vitals of old Hinduism. In the providence of God, who is able to make even the wrath of men to praise him, it may form a part of that great preparation of India, which is now going on through a multitude of different agencies, for the coming of the kingdom of God and of his Christ. At any rate, the future is bright with hope. Ancient Gnosticism, with its fables and endless genealogies, and its science falsely so called, paled and waned before the light of the sun of righteousness. This account of the Radhasoami sect constitutes a call to prayer, not primarily perhaps for the members of this sect, but for the Church of Christ in India. We have not walked in the beauty of holiness. We have not commended the gospel of Christ by our love and unselfishness. Men have been groping in the darkness of sin and error, and saying, "Who will show us any good?" And we have been unable effectively to point them to the Lamb of God, which taketh away the sin of the world. While the church has been slumbering and sleeping, Satan has been active, and multitudes have been enticed to accept a counterfeit salvation in the place of a real salvation. We, the members of the Indian Church, need first of all to utter for ourselves the prayer, "Lord, lift thou up the light of thy countenance upon us." And thank God, this prayer is going up from the multitudes of hearts these days. Thank God that the church is awaking out of sleep. Already are we beginning to hear the voice, "Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee." H. D. Griswold. The Rai Shaligram Saheb Bahadur, by Max Mueller in Ramakrishna, His Life and Sayings, 1898-1899. One more case, and I have done with my imperfect sketch of the stage on which Ramakrishna appears before us to act his part, together with his fellow actors who supported and often guided him in his unselfish and devoted endeavors. We read in the Prabuddha Bharata, May 1898, page 132, and so forth, of one Rai Shaligram Saheb Bahadur. Saheb Bahadur, who is now about 70 years of age, has spent a very active and useful life as an official in the post office, where he rose to be Postmaster General of the Northwestern Provinces. It seems that the horrors of the mutiny in 1857 made a deep impression on his mind. He saw thousands of men, women, and children butchered before his eyes, the rich reduced to poverty, the poor raised to unexpected and undeserved wealth, so that the idea of the world's impermanent and transient nature took complete possession of him, and estranged him from all that had formerly enlisted his interest and occupied his energies. From his very youth, however, his mind had been filled with religious and philosophical questions, and he is said to have devoted much time from his youth onward, through all the years of his official life, to the study of the sacred scriptures. No wonder, therefore, that after witnessing the horrors of the mutiny and its suppression, he should have wished to flee from this den of misery and to get happiness unalloyed and permanent, where alone it could be found. He went to consult several sannyasins and yogins, but they could not help him. At last, one of his colleagues at the post office recommended his elder brother as a spiritual guide who could be trusted. For 2 years he attended his lectures, comparing his teaching with that of the Upanishads and other holy writings, and then became his devoted pupil, or chela. During his stay at Agra, he allowed no one else to serve his master. He used to grind the flour for him, to cook his meals, and feed him with his own hands. Every morning he could be seen carrying a pitcher of pure water on his head for the guru to bathe in, which he fetched from a place 2 miles distant. His monthly salary also was handed over to the saint, who used it for the support of his pupils, wife, and children, and spent the rest in charity. All his home affairs were superintended by his guru, and this was done in spite of the opposition of his castemen, who were kayasthas, and did not approve of one of their caste cooking the saint's food and eating from his dishes, because the saint was a member of another caste, that of the Khetris. After some time, the pupil wished to retire from the postal service, but the saint would not allow it. When he was appointed Postmaster General of the Northwest, he fell on his knees before the saint and begged his permission to retire and enter soul and body into the true spiritual life. But the saint once more refused, saying that the discharge of his official duties would in no way interfere with his spiritual progress. Accordingly, he left Agra, and for many years held his new post at Allahabad, as it is said with great success, having introduced many reforms and useful changes in the postal department. It was not till the death of his guru in 1897 that the Postmaster General felt himself free and justified in leaving the service. He then became a guru himself, and imparted spiritual instruction to those who came to seek for his help. Often those who came to listen to him were so inspired by his teaching that they renounced the world and began to leave the light of sannyasins, so that it became a general belief that whoever went to Rai Shaligram would forsake his family and become an ascetic. Nay, it was said that no one could even look at the lamp burning on the upper story of his house without being influenced to renounce the world, to forsake his relations, and thus to become useless to the community at large. When last heard of, the old man was still alive, his house besieged every day by large numbers of persons, both male and female, who flock there from different parts of the country. He holds 5 meetings day and night for the purpose of imparting religious instruction, so that he has hardly more than 2 hours left for sleep. Everybody is welcome, and no distinction is made between Brahman and Shudra, rich and poor, good and bad. The people are convinced that he can work miracles, but he himself regards such things as unbecoming and below his dignity. It is said that the late Dr. Makund Lal, assistant surgeon to the Viceroy, was in the habit of sending to him patients who had made themselves senseless by excessive practice of pranayama, restraint of the breath, and that by a mere look he brought them back to their senses, and taught them that this practice was of little good, and in many cases injurious. Ramakrishna. The few cases mentioned here may suffice to show that Ramakrishna was by no means a solitary instance, and that, however much the old social system of the 4 stages as described by Manu may have changed, there are still sannyasins in India who lived the life of the ancient sannyasins, though of course in different surroundings and under different conditions. These cases are well authenticated as anything that comes to us from India is ever likely to be. If we turned our eyes to the ancient literature of that country, we should see sannyasins in large numbers, but their performances would probably be considered as fabulous. Nor should I venture to say that they are what we mean by well authenticated. The fact, however, that some of these sannyasins reduced themselves by ascetic exercises to mere skeletons, or became raving madmen, can hardly be doubted, if we may judge by the warnings against such excesses which appear at a very early time in the ancient literature of the country. Note: see a remarkable instance in Mrs. Flora Annie Steele's In the Permanent Way, 1898. A well-known instance is that of Buddha himself, who, before he founded his own religion, went through all the tortures of Brahmanic ascesis, but derived so little benefit from them that he denounced the whole system, as then practiced, not only as useless but as mischievous, preferring in all things what he called the via media. If we now turn our attention again to the fourth of the Paramahamsas, recognized by Keshub Chunder Sen as preeminent among his contemporaries, we shall feel less surprised by his life and his doctrines, but accept him as one of a class which has always existed in India. We possess indeed full accounts of his life, but they are often so strangely exaggerated, nay, so contradictory, that it seemed almost hopeless to form a correct and true idea of his earthly career and his character. I applied therefore to one of his most eminent pupils, Vivekananda, asking him to write down for me what he could tell of his own knowledge of his venerable teacher, and I received from him a full description of his master's life. It will be easily seen, however, that even this account is not quite free from traditional elements. If I give it as much as possible unaltered, I have a reason for it. The East and the West, by J. Kennedy in The East and the West, 1905. The members of the Arya Samaj are for the most part young men, clerks, small government officials, and the like, half-educated in English and ignorant of Sanskrit, but ardent believers in their cause and liberal supporters of it. Their patriotism is greater than their knowledge. The remaining movements which we have to review are more mature. Like the great religious movements of the Roman Empire, each claims to be a universal religion. Each is friendly to Christianity, and each borrows from it some of its ideas and much of its ethics. Each also remains Hindu at the core. The least important, but the most curious, is the Radhasoami Creed, a faith which numbers some 16,000 followers in the United Provinces, its original home. It is a variety of Gnosticism in many of its aspects, and had one met with it in an ancient writer, one would have readily accepted it as a product of the 2nd century. The Radhasoami Creed professes to be based upon a secret revelation which supersedes all others. It is a purely spiritual faith, a message of eternal peace and joy to all nations. Its adherents are laymen, engaged in their daily avocations, and at their head is a most estimable gentleman, formerly Postmaster General of the United Provinces. They form a spiritual brotherhood, in which all are equals, and they have no priests, but they honor their preachers and saints, and there is always the tremendous exception of the Sant Satguru, the incarnate Son of God. Caste and the outward observance of idolatrous ceremonies are matters of indifference to the free spirit, and may be adopted or discarded at pleasure. Knowledge is necessary but insufficient for salvation, and the perfect man must have love and faith, inseparable twins. An ardent love towards God, active love towards man, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world are the characteristics of the true believer. Indeed, they clothe most of their moral teaching in biblical phraseology, and they earnestly exhort all men not to put their trust in a deathbed repentance. But when we turn from their evangelical morality to their scheme of doctrine, we find it to be a Christian garb fitted on to a yoga philosophy. It would be tedious to enter into the details of this highly complex Oriental system, but the leading ideas are simple. Their theology is founded on the dualism of spirit and matter. Matter is atomic, chaotic, passive. Pure spirit exists in a purely spiritual world, an ocean of joy and love. Issuing forth, it allies itself with matter, takes form and individuality, and everywhere creates new worlds and centers of energy in its literal descent. And for each of these it establishes rulers and inhabitants. At last, the particles of the quickening spirit become so embedded in matter that without divine aid they cannot return to their source. Or, to adopt a metaphor more common with them, men are drops from the spiritual ocean and require divine assistance to regain it. But the upward path is beset with difficulties and with enemies. Salvation is to be attained by certain yoga practices and by the secret teachings of the Sant Satguru, which enable the soul to pursue its upward path, which is also the path by which it descended, to know the names of its ghostly enemies, and to overcome the obstacles which universal mind and matter place in its way. Over all this there is thrown a veil of Christian teaching. The main divisions of the universe are the spiritual material, and the material spiritual. It is through these regions that the spirit descends and reascends. In the spiritual world, the Supreme Being has his dwelling. In the spiritual material, the Lord God of the Bible is the viceroy, and in the lowest region, Brahma. Now this threefold division has undoubtedly been suggested by St. Paul's pneumatic, psychical, and somatic man, man being the microcosm and reflex of the universe. We have also a copy of the Christian Trinity, which is quite distinct from the above division. The Almighty Father dwells in the spiritual region, where individuality there is none, because form and individuality come of the Spirit's alliance with matter. But all the inhabitants of this world embrace individuality at their pleasure. The Holy Spirit, mixing with matter, is the mother, and from time to time God becomes incarnate himself, or sends down one of his many sons to be the Sant Satguru. The analogies between the Radhaswamis and the Gnostics are numerous and profound. Both appeal to a secret revelation. Both start with the dualism of spirit and matter. They have the same conception of the Supreme Being and the spirit world as beyond cognition. The downward passage of the spirit, its creation of eons and archons and innumerable beings on its road, and its gradual obscuration by matter are common to both. Above all, we have the conception of the human soul as a spark of divine origin, and the idea that all men can be, and some men are, the sons of God, while the reascension of the soul, and the path which it must follow, are the very raison d'être of both systems. Here they break off. The Gnostics put their trust in astrology and magic. The Radhaswamis in secret instructions and yoga practices. Philosophic dualism is rare in India. Its great philosophy is idealistic, and possesses a method which, according to Professor Deussen, if less scientific, is more inward and direct than that of any Western system. An idealist philosophy is of course not incompatible with Christianity. The specifically Hindu element in the Vedanta is the suppression of all personality. Now, there is no professed school of Neo-Vedantism, and we have to deal instead with a number of individual and eclectic writers who feel the necessity of a change of attitude. In their scholastic moments, the old expressions remain. That God neither loves nor hates is still their formula. But they are open to Christian impressions and adopt Christian ethical ideas without troubling themselves much about consistency. Their object is to prove that Christianity and Hinduism are the same, and in support of this, they appeal to identity of religious experience. And in this appeal there is much force. To the devout Hindu, Hinduism presents much that is tender and sublime. It has its profound reverences and its lofty aspirations, its rapturous joys in the glory of the world as the radiance of its Lord, its mystic trance of a higher communion, its perpetual sense of the divine presence. Hindu saints are usually represented as melting into tears when they meditate on the goodness of God. And, if devotees talk much of gnosis, the gnosis comes from the heart and not from the intellect. They live in a world of emotion. When Vedantists appeal to religious experience, they appeal to something real, if incomplete. Their argument runs thus. The ultimate teaching of all religions is the same. God is the only good, the end of all. In its ignorance, the individual soul projects its shadow on the universe and makes itself the center of the world. External law brings knowledge, but knowledge puffeth up. The soul proceeds to love, and, since love is perfected hereafter, the soul proceeds on earth by faith. Then, God's grace descends, engulfing all differences and fills everything. Whoso is specially loved by God becomes at once, by the magic of that love, a perfect being. It is the vanquishing of Satan by the Christ in us, and there is nothing left for man either to desire or to shun. Let Hindus know that Christianity is nothing but Hinduism in a foreign garb. Let Christians know that true Hinduism, the Hinduism of the Scriptures, is nothing but Christianity, recognizing the Christ spirit in the scheme of the world's regeneration, though not the historical Christ. And the elements of this reconciliation are to be found, not very lucidly, however, as the writer admits, in the sublime teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, which is the very philosophy, as it were, of all religions. Thus, Hinduism is Christianity's elder sister. The Vedantists compose the intellectual elite of India, and the Brahmo Samaj may be said to represent the most advanced section of that school, and the one in which its novel tendencies are most clearly defined. It declares itself to be a movement for the revival of the national religion. All the great religions unite, according to it, in a broad universal theism, in the doctrine of a supreme, indivisible spirit God. But, although this belief is laying the foundations of a universal brotherhood, it is insufficient for the foundation of a church, or even of a private cult. All religions differ in their various conceptions of the relation of God to the world. They differ still more wherever theism has awakened a sense of sin and unworthiness and given rise to a struggle for a holier life. The historic and national form of religion must, therefore, be retained so far as it is compatible with progressive thought. Science has not affected the essence of either Christianity or Hinduism, and Hindus cannot afford to neglect the theism taught in the Upanishads, developed in later theistic writings, and deepened by the culture and experience of 10,000s of saints and sages. They cannot build up a purer theism of their own. The claim to conservatism is justified in the main. God is still represented as the absolute reality where being and not being meet. Ishvara as the causal God, Brahma as the world all. We still move within the Vedanta ring fence, nor do we altogether quit it when the Brahmoists assign a relative reality to the world and to man. The breach begins when the Brahmoists treat of individuality and practical morals. Liberation is no longer to be attained by merging the human soul in the infinite, for that is impossible, and immortality is at once the lot and the solace of mankind. The endless series of rebirths which filled the older Vedantists with pessimism and despair presents no terrors for the Brahmoist, for it affords him a boundless field for well-doing. The passive virtues are not the greatest, and the antinomian quietism which regarded virtue and vice as equally indifferent is now anathematized. Thus the old scheme of salvation melts away, and the dawn begins of a new ethos, a sense of personality, and a desire for individual immortality. Indeed, the Brahmoist position is not unlike Spinoza's.